Hello, my name is Holly and I'm an alcoholic. Oh my goodness. So happy to be here with all of you. And thank you for asking me to share today at your meeting. Okay, got it. And that's what I'm putting in. Step six, I just shared on step seven about 3 hours ago. So I feel like I might be a little bit prepared. Oh my goodness. I want to start off by saying that I'm doing a Drop the Rock right now with another woman. We're doing a workshop for women in all 12-step programs. And we're going through Drop the Rock paragraph by paragraph. And if you're unfamiliar with the book, the big book, it's like they just kind of forgot about six and seven, right? We've got two paragraphs in the big book on six and seven, and then nothing else. As they kind of whiz through what I think is the crux of the program, which is I didn't stop drinking because alcohol was my problem. It was a symptom, and my character building is what I'm being asked to work on. And they talk about that in step 5, in step 6, in step 7, and in steps 10. And so if I'm working on character building, then I got to talk about the flaws in my character, which I'm not always immediately aware of. I have 26 years of sobriety today, and I can tell you that I had different character defects at 20 years, at 15 years, at 10 years, and at 5 years because I was not aware of them. It wasn't that they weren't living and breathing in me, but I was unaware of them. And God has been very kind to me over the years, only giving me those character defects that I'm willing to look at that moment. So in the beginning, my character defects, I remember coming back from meetings and my mother says, well, what do you talk about there? Which was very interesting what we talked about. And not knowing anything about anonymity or traditions or sharing, I said, Mom, they're constantly telling me that I'm selfish and self-centered. So you're just going to have to live with the fact that I'm selfish and self-centered. That's who I am, because that's what they're telling me. And those were the two character defects that I knew about. And I didn't understand how I was selfish and self-centered. And that's what it asks us in step 6, right? Is to surrender. I'm supposed to be surrendering for a lifetime my character defects. So in those early years, I wasn't really willing to surrender anything but the fact that I felt crappy all the time. If you're new in sobriety and you feel crappy, welcome. That's how you're supposed to feel when you give up your best friend, which is alcohol, the solution. And so I felt low. I felt maybe even depressed. I felt lonely. And my character defect is that I didn't want to share it with any of you because you had all been here before me, which I thought was, years and years and decades and decades. And I was the last one to join Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wasn't going to tell you how I was feeling because it was too embarrassing. So let's go through. There's ego there. There's pride. Doing it alone with my library full of self-help books. That was what kind of got me through the first little while as well. So those character defects coming up for me, they didn't show up obviously enough. And my sobriety is very slow, like tick-tock seconds slow. So I didn't come in and embrace all of you and say, yes, I'm so grateful. Give me what you have. I want to throw myself into this program. No, I said, I still have a life and I'm very busy. And I don't know that, I can make more than one meeting a week. And so the character defects without the alcohol started to grow. With the alcohol present, they were there, but without the alcohol, without that fix, without that elixir, without that breathable moment, for me, which was 7 p.m. till 1 a.m, all of a sudden I started to get cranky, crabby, impatient, short-tempered. I started yelling and screaming a lot. I started cursing. And I thought, oh my God, that's what it is. It's the yelling. That's what I have to give up, yelling. And so I gave up yelling. And so I surrendered that. Now, in 6, it's asking us to, write out this list after 4 and 5 of all the defects of character, not asking us to give it to God, which is like, really painful. It's like, get into the shower, but don't soap yourself up, just stand there wet for a while. And so there I was kind of, standing there exposed with all my character defects that I'm writing out and writing out and writing out and writing out. And it made me feel really, really awful about myself, because we don't tend to do an assets list along with our defects list. And I'm in another 12-step program now that I was doing this summer, and we were working on 6 and 7. And, they had this interesting exercise of what would be the opposite of your defect. That would be the asset. And if we're going to, do some math or baking or however, analogy you're going to do, it's like, okay, if I have 3 cups of defect, if I add 3 cups, will it become an asset? Could I get it to maybe be a cup and a half? Because I'm striving for progress, not perfection. And so I'd kind of like, not yell and scream for a few days. And then I have a big outburst at work and embarrass myself and then think, I've failed. I failed. It wasn't like, well, I can start over, or I can do it a little better this time. Or how about slow and steady? Or how about you get to continue this for a lifetime? But for some reason, I thought there was a graduation date, that I had to finish it, that I had to complete it, that once I was going to have the wherewithal, the God consciousness of this character defect, and I was going to say it out loud, poof, it was going to be gone like magic. And I know that this program is not magical. It's incredible, it's miraculous, but it's not magical. I really have to put in the work for it. So how did I start to work for it, in this surrender? Well, I was lying in a hospital bed, 2.5 years sober. I'd made myself so sick and so lack of self-care that I wound up with lockjaw in the hospital, unable to move, unable to work, unable to speak, which I really, really like doing. And I was lying there, and all of a sudden, I just said this really, really ungrateful prayer. I said, okay, fine, what? That was my prayer to God. That was as spiritually minded as I could be, was, okay, fine, what? And this warm energy entered the hotel, the hospital room, through the door, which was on the left side of me, and entered my chest cavity. And I heard the words, change everything. And then it left, and it left through the window, and the whole room got cool again. I didn't even tell any of you that happened until I was 10 years sober, because I thought that was so crazy. I was so embarrassed that I had a white light moment, and I hadn't really read Bill's story clearly, that I just kept that to myself. And so one of my character defects that came out for me was secret keeping. Secret keeping. I didn't really want you to get to know me, because if you really got to know me, you wouldn't like me. And then there's ego. And let's go to validation from outside of myself and others. And from that, expectations. Well, I'm 2.5 years sober. I should have it locked down by now at 2.5 years. I mean, a university degree is in 4. I'm more than halfway there. And so this was the stuff that was building up in me in sobriety. And so as I started unpacking a 4th and a 5th, and as I got to that character defects list and I started writing it out, I could only get as clear as I was spiritually fit. I had had a vital life and death spiritual experience, and I did start to change my life. I did start to change everything within 90 days. I had changed everything when I got out of that hospital bed in February of 2000. But was I still secret keeping? Was I still holding on to my ego? Was I still validating from outside of others? Yes. Was I conscious of it? No. And so as I got sober and as I moved along and I started to work the steps, and I did all 12 steps, we talk about this being a 12-step program, but how about doing all 12 steps? Because I had gotten to step 5 with one sponsor, and she said, go ahead and read 6 through 12 by yourself. Oh, okay. And so I did that. And I started to feel very low again. And I started to feel very detached from the program. And I didn't want to tell you. And my secret keeping came back, and so on and so forth. And so eventually I did all 12 steps. And then I started sponsoring other women. And I could see their defects of character so clearly. And I thought it would be a really wonderful, brilliant spiritual idea to tell them about their character defects that I saw so clearly, which turned out to be another defect of character. It turns out I'm a rescuer, I'm a savior, I'm a manipulator, I'm a controller. I want to help you. And so let's speed this thing along, and I'll just write out your 6-step for you, and then read it to you, and then you can do 7, on your own. And so these were the kinds of, mistakes. And then, of course, I get into 8 and 9, and I have to make amends for those things. And I talk about the other steps in this 6-step talk because for me, the steps are like keys of the piano or a ladder or steps. I'm running back and forth and up and down. I can't really write out a character defects list unless I know what my defects of character is, if I haven't gotten really honest in step 5. And I can't have God remove them in the next step if I don't have a God. So then I have to go back to 3 and maybe even to 2 and have real clarity about that. And, every so often I think that I'm really clear about my higher power. I really know who he is. And then I take back my will and I start playing God again. And then I have to do it all over again. And so, this is a lifetime of, oh my goodness, this is a lifetime of work. And so now one of my assets is pacing myself. Can I pace myself? Because I have 2 speeds. I have run and crash. Those are my 2 main speeds. And I see black and I see white and I don't see gray. So can I start to see gray in a situation? Can I start to flog myself and go down on myself and go hard on myself and then stop and say, hold on, what have you done right today? Because as I'm doing step 6, it says to surrender. It doesn't say to flog myself. It doesn't say, do what had been done to you, which in my childhood was criticism. Criticize, criticize, criticize. And I heard it so many times that now I don't even need those people in my life to criticize me. I can just criticize myself. Very, very good at it. And in turn, I can criticize you thinking that I'm trying to be helpful. And so my character defects go back and forth and back and forth. I went and I made an amends to an old sponsee of mine a couple of weeks ago. And, in step 7, they talk about humility and how do we get humble. And it is humbling to write out all these defects of character. It can be, soul destroying if we don't do it with another person. But I went to make this amends to the sponsee because I was absolutely sure how much she hated me. Just so angry with me, just so furious with me. And I went to her and I made amends and I validated her and I told her what I had done and how I had treated her. And, how it was a healthy decision that, I stopped sponsoring her 5 years ago and so on and so forth. And I said, because the last time I saw you, you were so angry with me. I have to unburden myself. I have to get rid of this character defect. And she looked at me and said, well, I love you. I accept your amends. But I told my husband and my children the day before I saw you that we were getting a divorce. And so when I ran into you with my husband and my children, I was ticked off at him. What? The world doesn't revolve around me. It hadn't everything to do with me. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, there's another character defect. That when you are angry and you are ticked off, I must have done something wrong. And then that pushes me into over apologizing, being disingenuous, being over apologetic, groveling. And then that one, of course, led into the low self-esteem, which is a character defect. And the low self-esteem is a character defect because, again, in steps 2 and 3, if I have a higher power and he hasn't made me exactly as he wants me to be, and he's not giving me any more than I can handle, and I am one of God's kids and not one of God's grandkids, then there's no reason for me to crawl before anyone. And that low self-esteem is really self-centered fear. That I am just thinking about myself and doing the alcoholic operatic of, me, like all the time, that I am assuming you are in turn thinking about me. And then I get another character defect. And what does it say about character building? Character building is getting out of ourselves in this altruistic matter and helping others. I can't help you when I'm all wrapped up in me. And that character defect is thick. That's just not one layered. That is just like a thick cake of character defects where the eggs and the flour and the sugar and is the self-centered fear and the all about me and the validation, getting my validation from outside of myself, through others. And it compounds. And so when she told me that, we both laughed. And I just thought, wow, what an example for me to carry through next time I try to write too big a list, too big an assets, a character defects list, A dozen is more than enough. Especially if I'm going to do this for a lifetime, I can add to it. I don't need to, pile on myself like this. My sponsor used to say that she spoke fluent Victimese. And when she said it, I thought, oh yeah, I speak fluent Victimese too, but I'm self-justified, but you don't know what happened to me, but, drama, 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 drama. And I heard a speaker earlier say that she wasn't going to use her mother as her alibi any longer. And I thought, oh my God, now we got to crack open the martyrdom and the victimese and the poor me's. And you would have drank if, this kind of person was in your life, and so on and so forth. And so as I get more and more sober, new character defects are developing. And I had the sponsor, Sweet Marie, and I went to her at 20 years and, told her that I was willing to surrender my character defect, but one of my character defects was pride in the meetings of AA, because I had 20 years of sobriety. And when I was young, I used to look to those who had 20 years of sobriety and think, aha, they have had a lobotomy. They are completely fixed. They have no more alcoholism, and I can't wait until I get 20 years. And so there I had 20 years, and guess what? No lobotomy. Same brain, had to get up every morning, surrender myself, turn my will over to God, on and on and on, the same exercise, spiritual exercise routine that I had been doing. And she said, how sober are you? I said, I have 20 years. She said, oh, that's why. It's because you knew. I said, what? She said, well, I have 45 years of sobriety. You knew. And we laughed. And I know that when you say something to me that's true, first, I feel hurt. I always feel hurt first. But if I can laugh about it, then I know I can work on it. I remember somebody telling me to lighten up in the meeting. Well, they're not working all the traditions and they need to work all 12 traditions. And lighten up, Holly. You're not the AA police. Getting all my feathers ruffled. Well, this morning I told my 9-year-old son to lighten up. And I thought, wow, lightening up. I mean, who knew? Talk about being an iceberg in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and not being able to defrost my feelings, not being able to cry, not being able to be vulnerable, not being able to say what happened. when I was, let's see, how old would I have been? When I was 10 years sober until I was, no, 9 years sober until I was 19 years sober, I tried to have a baby. So that was a 9 year span, not a 9 month span. And I was infertile and I wasn't having a baby. And I didn't want to tell everybody how broken my body was. I didn't want to tell all of you how not womanly I was, that I wasn't equal enough. I had all sorts of words for, what God was doing to me. And that character defect really kept me from sharing who I was in the rooms. I was very standoffish. I was very serious. And I had a couple of sponsees at the time, and one of them was a chef. And during that period, I would have miscarried babies. I had miscarried babies, and I didn't tell anybody about it. But I had told her at the time that I was pregnant. And so I had to tell her that I wasn't pregnant. And I remember her showing up at at our home group. And she'd have a little warm Tupperware. And she would always wait till the meeting started so I couldn't talk to her. And she would just slide the Tupperware across. And I'd kind of mouth the words, "What's this?" And she's like, "Oh, it's leftovers." It wasn't leftovers. She was feeding me because she can see that I wasn't taking care of myself, that I wasn't eating properly, and that I wasn't taking care of myself. And that was a character defect at the time, that I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel that God thought I was worthy to be a mother or to even take care of myself properly. And so she was feeding me. And, that's what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that one, you can all see my bag of doo-doo coming in the room and smell it before I've even identified it, whether I'm aware of my character defects or not. I know you're aware of them because you have mothered me, you have fathered me, you have sistered me, you have held me, and you have loved me until I could love myself. And that takes time. And codependency is another one of my character defects. And at the time, all my sponsees were codependent too. Yay! Isn't it nice how that works out? So we had to follow each other around and, call each other every day. And oh, wasn't that wonderful and sick and healthy all at the same time? And one of my sponsees was so codependent that we decided we got pregnant at the exact same time. And so we had babies a day apart in the same hospital. And we used to take our babies to the meetings, and we used to pass the babies around, and people would just hold the babies for us. And I remember thinking, let them love you, let them love you, let them love your baby, let them love your baby. And, there was this thing in me like, no, I am the mother. I need to do this. I need to do that. But that's just when I put my cape on and my mask, and I play superhero. And playing superhero and social justice warrior and, codependent and mother to all. And I've so many hats, I can't fit them all in my head. And those are those are character defects. Character defects is whenever I am acting in a way that is not my true self, that is a character defect. When I'm putting on a bravado, or I'm playing the victim, when I just want to hug. I used to have this little thing where I'd pick a fight with the love of my life, my husband, first thing in the morning, because that's how you want to start off the day, right? Before we've even had breakfast, I'd say something to him. And he is not in this program, and it is so annoying how spiritual he is, but he would just turn around to me and say, "Oh, do you need a hug?" No, I do not need a hug. No, I am seriously angry with you that you left the honey open. The honey open? And he'd just chase me around the island until I would surrender. And then he would hug me. And I'd just melt. I would just melt into his arms. It was exactly what I needed. So why is it that I am so unwilling to surrender these character defects that are not serving me? That that is the ancient question, isn't it? When I am truly willing to surrender a character defect that is no longer serving me, I surrender it. But what about when it's serving me? What about when I don't feel like anybody will listen to me unless I'm speaking like a victim? What if I think my voice can't be heard unless I am screaming and yelling? What if the only way that I got what I wanted was to walk all over you, to cheat you, to lie, to steal, to just take? Well, then I'm not willing to surrender that. And so again, I have to go back to God, and I have to go back to that character building that we're talking about in step 5, and how stepping on the toes of our others did not work and they retaliated. And once I can get really clear about that, for me, it's always a poof. And 6 and 7 is tied into 10. You know that, but 6 and 7 is tied into 10, because in step 10, when we're taking our inventory once again, like a current 4th and 5th, it's really 6 through 9 equals 10. And so as I'm writing out that current resentment, and I'm so angry with you, and you're such a turkey, and it's all your fault, and I'm taking your inventory instead of personal inventory, I am not going to surrender whatever character defect it is that got me that way, because you're more wrong than I am wrong. And so it's my experience with step 10 is that I keep writing it out until there's a poof moment. And a poof moment is all of a sudden I see my part and yours falls away. All of a sudden my defective character is so glaring. It's like so bright in my face. I cannot deny it. And I go, oh yeah, my bad. That was me. Yeah. Okay. That was me. I mean, you might be a bit of a turkey too, but I'm the only turkey I can change. I'm the only one I can work on. And that's how I know it's going to relieve itself. I had a neighbor who was really bothering me, yelling at me. She was writing me emails. Will you chop this tree down? I don't like the leaves. Okay. Then, well, how about this tree? Okay. Are you going to clean up this mess? Okay. I don't like the way you did this landscaping. Okay. And I just
5 minutes, Billy. 5 minutes.
Thank you.
5 minutes, Billy. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted her to like me so much that I kept doing what she wanted to do. But guess what? It was an empty well. No, it was a forever well. There was no filling her up. She was just going to ask me to do things over and over and over and over again and never be satisfied. And I had to say, why is it that I want this woman who, if I'm a big tree and this is my trunk, she's like a leaf on my tree. Why am I treating her like a branch, that she's so important? And so she came into my backyard one morning to complain about my gardening, that I hadn't weeded enough. And I said to my husband, that's it, let me at her. And he's like, no, please stay inside the house. I want to go talk to her. And I called my sponsor about it, and she said, why don't you build a fence? Oh, well, neighbors don't tend to have fence. So what, Holly? She's coming onto your property. Build a fence. Oh, okay. And 2 weeks later, I've got the permits from the city, and I've got the lumber, and I've got my husband and I and my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law. We're all going to build this fence together. And I go to hear Marianne Williamson, who is a fellow, and she's giving this wonderfully inspirational talk about how we should not build fences in between each other. And I thought, okay, take what you want and leave the rest, sorry, Marianne, but this fence is going to be built. And, I haven't heard from her again since that fence was built a year ago, October. And it's not the point that the fence was built or the fence wasn't built. For me, it was the character defects of why I had to build the fence. And in the future, how hopefully I will be able to not exhibit those character defects like people pleasing, like dishonesty, like wanting to be liked, like low self-esteem, to get me into a place again. So I will be in that kind of conflict. I'm trying to build self-esteem through esteemable acts, character building, so that I don't have to crawl before anyone, because it is when I am crawling or when I am floating above you that my character defects are most glaring. And I have to say, you know, I had compassion and understanding for that woman in the end after writing out 10 steps for months. And I could see that my part in that all was from the get-go. I started a dishonest relationship with her. That was my part. And had from the get-go, I said, you know, I kind of like my tree and it's on my property. I'll think about it. I wouldn't have set the ball rolling for all the other actions that happened since then. So I thank you all for allowing me to talk about my journey through surrender and the 6th step today. Remember that it is a lifetime journey. As long as you're on this side of the grass, you can keep working on it. I intend to, and I hope you have a beautiful day.
Pew, pew,
Wow.
pew.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank
Wonderful.
you,
So
Holly.
funny. That's brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly.
Pew, pew, pew,
Thank
you so much,
pew.
Holly. That was amazing.
Wow. Thank you so much, Holly. And do you know what? If you want more Holly, she's got a workshop going at the moment, but unfortunately it's women's only. So I will be putting that flyer in the chat. Holly, wow, that was amazing. Yeah, I love listening to you. And you know what? I wake up that me, you know, all the time. I wake up and it's all about me, and it's my selfishness and self-centeredness. It just kicks in. And you know, I'm a kind of person that, you know, I love the analogy you use with the cake. You know, it's just stuck on me. It's all